Good morning. So, my name is Laurie Warnock, and I work for the Northern New England Poison Center. I'm known in New Hampshire as the face of poison, which is kind of a miserable title, but my job is as the education coordinator. So I travel all over the state of New Hampshire doing presentations just like this, to schools, to parents, to community groups, on a lot of different topics. But most recently, the most popular topic has been on electronic nicotine delivery devices. No one calls them electronic nicotine delivery devices except people who work in public health. You know them as vapes, e-cigarettes, Juuls, Sorin, Drop, Puff, all kinds of different names. And it matters what we call them, because if I asked you, have you used an electronic nicotine delivery device in the last 30 days, you would probably say, no. But I asked you if you vape, you might answer differently. And so when we do surveys of students to find out what it is they're doing, we have to make sure that the words we're using match the way that you identify your behaviors. So we're going to talk about a little bit of data so that we understand sort of the scope of the problem as we as adults see it. I'm going to talk to you about e-cigarettes, and I'm going to specifically talk to you about the marketing strategies that have been used to target you. Because otherwise I'm just someone's mom standing up here saying, please don't do bad things. And I know that's not nearly as effective as showing you that maybe you're being manipulated and things that you should take into consideration when you're making decisions about whether or not to use these products. A little bit about the Poison Center. The Poison Center is actually located in Maine Med in Portland, covers Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And it's a windowless room with absolutely brilliant people and the weirdest collection of posters of poisonous plants and bugs and spiders and snakes and all manner of things, mushrooms that are toxic. But it's a great resource for you. It's an 800 number. It's on the very last slide, and you can call 24/7. It's free and it's confidential, which means sort of like talking to a doctor. You can ask any question that you want to without fear of necessarily having it, followed up with mom and dad 24 hours later, unless you're in some kind of danger. We get all kinds of questions. So a babysitter who calls to say, the baby just got some diaper cream in her mouth, is that a problem? Or a parent who calls and says, I found this pill on the floor of my daughter's bedroom and I don't know what it is. Can you help me identify it? And we usually can. Sometimes we get calls from people who say, I heard about this stuff from a friend of mine, and I know I could look it up on the internet, but I never know what's true on the internet, so I thought I might call and ask a person. You can text us, you can chat with us. We've leaped into the 20th century. So all of that information is on the last slide. As I said, it's a 24/7 free resource for you. So we're going to talk about the marketing strategy that you in specific are the target of. So back in the day, there were cigarette ads like these. The Marlboro Man coming off his long, dusty trail ride, having a cigarette. It was the absolute image of masculine, of studly, macho ruggedness. And 3 of the models that posed for those ads died of lung cancer. One guy that was originally one of the models decided he didn't like the campaign's message, so he quit. He just died recently at age 96. Good move on his part. You've got the camel guy on Take Your Tire to Work Day or something. And Camel actually used cartoon character, Joe Camel, to advertise their product for a while until the government said, whoa, using a cartoon character? You're targeting kids. You're specifically marketing your product toward kids. That doesn't work for us. And they fined them several $1 million, which went into prevention education, because the idea that marketing a product like this to kids was considered a bad move as policy. Try this. Where? Keep moving. Okay. Let's go down here to the mic. So, there we go. Not to be left out, there were ads for the ladies, too. Whether she was dressed as a superhero or in whatever the most stylish outfit of the day was. You've come a long way, baby. You have an equal right to lung cancer. Or Eve, pretty cigarettes just for her, right? And all of this was, again, part of the marketing of this activity as a social activity, as something that made you seem sophisticated, made you seem mature or mysterious. Let's try again. All right, where am I going? There we go. If you go even further back, you see ads like these. Mama, before you scold me, maybe you'd better light up a Marlboro. Now, most of you have grown up in a world where we know that smoking around children is dangerous, that secondhand smoke has similar issues to actually smoking, that it can be as dangerous to be affected by it secondarily as it can be primarily. You need never feel oversmoked. That's the magic of Marlboro. I don't even know what that means. But you'd see ads in the magazines that had a man in a white lab coat, a doctor, saying, after a long day of seeing patients, nothing soothes my throat like a menthol cigarette, which made it seem like not only was this not a dangerous thing, but doctors actually recommended it. And this was after the cigarette companies knew what we in the general public did not know, that there was something about their product that was addictive, and that they were losing customers not because people were quitting smoking, but because an odd number of their customers were dying. Now, we hadn't necessarily in the health community made the connection between illnesses and smoking. They had. There we go. And eventually we started doing counter-marketing. Once we realized in 1964, when the Surgeon General's report came out that said, hey, we've actually been able to prove scientifically there's a connection between cigarette smoking and illness, and that it's a dangerous thing to do, we started doing counter-marketing. Go ahead. So you may have seen some of these ads, right? That's Terry at the top in both of those pictures. This second one on the top here was filmed right about 3 weeks before she died, because she was so committed to showing the cost that smoking had on her health and on her family and her life. The guy at the bottom starts off with a mouthful of teeth, and then he takes his fake teeth out and talks about that he's had oral cancers, etc. And you may have seen some of these ads, whether it's probably on television, because you haven't seen magazine ads in a long time, since you were 5 in the dentist's office and you read highlights, right? Because you don't read magazines. But you might have seen them in social media. Probably not. Go ahead. So we used to do a lot of education about cigarettes, that cigarettes were not just paper wrapped around tobacco, that there was a lot of engineering that went into this product to make it burn more slowly, to make it taste better, to make it less irritating on your throat. And those engineering strategies come into play when we start talking about e-cigarettes as well. Of course, the most important ingredient was nicotine, which was found naturally in tobacco because it's an addictive chemical, and that's what brings you back as a customer. But all these other ingredients that were added had their contribution as well. Toluene, arsenic, methane, all of those, cadmium, these are all things that contributed to some of the negative health outcomes, the cancers and the other illnesses that evolved from using cigarettes. Go ahead. We used to talk about the healthy lung and the smoker's lung. The teachers in the room will remember seeing these. I don't know if we still do these in health education classes, because we don't really do as much education about smoking as we used to, because we have, in a lot of ways, cut down on the number of people who smoke. We've got the blackened lung with all the tar and disgusting things that cigarette smoking contribute, and the healthy pink lung, right? I'm not entirely sure how healthy the healthy lung is, given that its original owner is no longer wearing it. But in any case, it looks pink and healthy. Go ahead. We used to talk about how smoking stained your teeth and your clothes and your hair, and it made everything smell bad. Go ahead. And that it contributed to a whole host of diseases. It wasn't just about lung cancer. It was about skin issues. It was about bone issues. It was about reproductive health. There were a whole bunch of body systems, cardiac health, that were affected by smoking. And we really did a good job with this education. Go ahead. Because if you look from about 1965 down to 2020, we've seen a great decline in the number of adults who smoke. That green line is adults. Now, we didn't really start measuring teens until about 1990, How many of the teachers in the room had a smoking area at their high school? Yeah, because when we went to high school, you could buy cigarettes at 16. And you could actually buy them at a machine in the lobby of the restaurant. Mom would say to you, honey, go get Mama a pack of cigarettes. You know which ones I like. And she'd give you a handful of coins, and you'd run out there. You'd put them in the machine. You'd pull the little plunger, and a pack of cigarettes would drop down. You'd run back to the table, and Mom could light up right there at the restaurant, sitting like right across from your table. She could sit there puffing away. Most of you have grown up in an environment where that doesn't happen anymore. You used to be able to smoke on airplanes. Can you imagine being captive in an airplane for a 5-hour flight next to someone who smoked in an enclosed cabin? Blah. But that was culturally appropriate, and we accepted that as the way that it was. We started measuring teens, and you can see there's a spike there in the blue line. I'm not sure if that's because there was an actual increase in teen smokers, or it was a matter of how we were measuring. Again, if we ask the question the wrong way, we don't get the right answers. We don't get the actual information. But even among teens, you can see the blue line is on the downward trend. So we've done a really good job of making the case against traditional cigarettes. We've done education. We've also done legislation. We've raised the age of sale to at least 18, and in many places, Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, Canada, to 21. Now, several teen groups, prevention groups, have brought legislation up to New Hampshire to the State House in Concord in the last couple of years, trying to raise the age to 21. Because we know from what we did with alcohol sales, if we raise the age to 21, it limits the amount of access that high schoolers have and that younger kids have, since we know that high school kids will buy for their younger siblings and their younger friends. They're often the providers. So if we raise the age to 21, it does make a difference. And for the past 3 years, that legislation's been voted down, which seems odd because we know it works. But we make a lot of money in the state of New Hampshire selling cigarettes to people between the ages of 18 and 21 who can't get cigarettes in Maine or Massachusetts or Vermont or Canada. So there's been a real economic reason why we haven't chosen a policy that has good evidence behind it for health consequences. Now, nationally, the age is going to 21, which means it will be raising. So legislation does work. The other thing is, when we talk about legislation, we're looking at a national conversation about making marijuana a legal substance for recreational use. And we're doing a lot of work in establishing where it can be manufactured or grown, how it's processed, how it's packaged, where it's sold, how much you can sell, who can buy it. All those rules are being put in place by states considering this as a possibility. We didn't do any of that with e-cigarettes. We, as the adults that were in charge, we didn't set any of those rules. We let the e-cigarette manufacturers make those rules. And they did, much to their benefit. So unlike regular cigarettes where you have to go face-to-face with someone and say, yes, I'm of legal age to buy this product, and that person and that entity can get fined if they sell to someone underage, we made these available online, where all you had to do was hit the button that said, yes, I am over 18, and then pull out your gift card. We made these products available without any product safety standards. So when we look at these devices, teddy bears have 10 standards they have to meet as a manufactured product so that the eye doesn't pop off and choke a toddler. E-cigarettes don't have any product safety standards. How many of you have seen videos of someone's e-cigarette blowing up in their pants pocket? Hands. Just one. Oh, two. Good. Yeah, fire in this region of the body ought to be a deterrent, I would think. Okay? And yet, there's no product safety standards because they couldn't give a rat's fanny about your level of safety in using their product, right? Go ahead. So legislation, education, and taxation have really worked when it comes to cigarettes because we've raised the price of cigarettes by taxing them and taking some of that tax money and using it for education. If you look, all of those blue lines are traditional tobacco products. The red line is e-cigarettes. Really developed as a product with the goal of helping someone to quit smoking, it became a product as an alternative to smoking for many people. If you've known someone who switched from, an adult who switched from traditional cigarettes to e-cigarettes, yay them, because for them it probably is a less harmful alternative. Probably and less harmful. Probably because we don't know, and less harmful because it's still harmful. I would also probably guess that if they've switched from cigarettes to e-cigarettes, a year later, they're still vaping because they haven't, thank you for coughing right on cue, they haven't really broken their nicotine addiction, they've just changed to a different device. So they're still addicted to nicotine, and in some ways they may be more addicted to nicotine than they were before because the nature of the nicotine in e-cigarettes is different than the nature of the nicotine in traditional cigarettes. So you see there's a big spike there in 2015. That's the year Juul came out. Now there's a dip in the data, and that's probably because we were not using the right terminology. When we add words like Juul, vape, Sorin, drop, candy pen, whatever, e-cigarette to the surveys, our numbers jump. And we find that 1 in 5 high school students admits to using an e-cigarette in the last 30 days. 1 in 5, which is a huge number. It also means that 4 out of 5 are not using. But we don't see those students, right? Because we see the students that are vaping. We see the problem, we don't see the people that are not participating. Nobody posts a video of them sitting in their room not vaping. You post a video of yourself sitting in my bedroom vaping, #sorrymom. You know, that's what we see. So that's a lot more visible than, but in that period of time from 2015 to 2018, Juul became a $16 billion company. Billion with a B. So that's faster growth than Amazon, faster growth than Apple, faster growth than Google. You've got an Apple phone, it's a device that costs somewhere around $600. They made $16 billion selling a device that costs $35. And they made it off of you. They made that money out of your pocket. And again, they could not care whether or not their device is harming you. They could not care whether or not that device is a safe device or whether the juice, they know the juice is addictive, so that's a plus. Go ahead. So when we ask teens what do they think is in the juice they're vaping, a good proportion of them say to us, oh, you know, it's just flavored water. It's not, I don't use anything that's got any nicotine in it. There are 15,000 different juices out there. The percentage of them that have zero nicotine is very small because why bother? It's the nicotine that brings you back. So why bother making something with zero nicotine? And it's not just about the nicotine. We're going to talk about the other ingredients. But we know, in fact, if you're using Juul, real Juul pods, they actually have among the higher concentrations. They don't even make a zero nicotine product. They label their product at 5%, which seems low, but that means 50 milligrams per milliliter. That's very high. Their low product is still 30 milligrams per milliliter. It's labeled 3%. Seems very low, but it's a very high concentration. Another group of kids tell us, yeah, I know there's nicotine in what I'm vaping, but it's no big deal. I can do without it. It's just I like the flavor, okay? And then another group of students tell us, yeah, okay, I use it for marijuana. I use it for hash oil. I use it for some kind of juice that has THC, the psychoactive component of marijuana. Now, if you're using medical marijuana to treat a health condition, vaping is actually a safer, healthier way of using it than smoking, right? Because we know smoking creates ash and tar and debris that gets inhaled into your lungs. And vaping in itself is actually a great way to administer medication. Any of you who have asthma and use a metered dose inhaler, you know that turning medication into a very fine mist and inhaling it into lung tissue is a very good way to get it quickly into your bloodstream, because that's how that system works. So nebulizers and inhalers are all good ways of getting stuff into your bloodstream. Unfortunately, when we talk about this, the ingredients in here, it's not just about the nicotine. The main ingredients to most juices are propylene or ethylene glycol, which is an ingredient found in antifreeze. It's also a food-grade sweetener in small amounts, which is why when you spill it on the floor of your garage, the dog likes to lick it up because it's sweet. And then you would call 1-800-222-1222, the Poison Center, please. And also vegetable glycerin, which is another just sort of slippery substance. Those are also the ingredients in theater smoke. So when you're doing a play and you've got the smoke machine going, those are the same ingredients. Not necessarily something you'd think normally about sucking into your lungs, right? And then there are flavorings, there are sweeteners, etc., other flavorings that are included. All of them are food safe, which means they're safe to digest. You know enough about your body, about biology now, to know that your digestive system and your respiratory system are very different, right? I know it's safe to drink Hershey's chocolate syrup. I have tested this in the interest of science. Some of you have tested this as well? Good. Because it's food safe, right? But if I turn it into a mist and I inhale it, I have no idea if it's lung safe, because that's a whole different environment. And you know that lung tissue is very different. If I take that bottle of Hershey's syrup and I squeeze it into a washing machine, and I slam the door and I turn the washing machine on, eventually it's going to flush out of that system. When I open the washing machine again, it's going to be clean. But if I squeeze that into an air conditioning unit, it doesn't have a means to flush that sticky, sweet, perfectly healthy substance out of there. Because that's not how that device works. That's not how that system works. It's meant to process air, not sticky, sweet chocolate syrup. So even if you're using a juice that has no nicotine in it, you're still putting stuff into lung tissue that's not meant to be processed by lung tissue. And so we're going to be watching for the next 30 years to see what kind of illnesses develop as a result of this exposure, because no one gets cancer from their first cigarette, right? It takes exposure over a long period of time. And then you get sick and we wonder why you got sick. And then it takes us a longer period of time to do the research to see, did smoking or vaping cause that illness? Until we can definitively, it took us decades to figure out what effect cigarette smoking had. It's going to take us decades of watching you and your peers to see, do we have new cancers that we never knew existed? Do we have allergies that we've never had before because we've never had lung tissue exposed to these food-grade substances? Are you more prone to viruses like the flu or mono? Do you get sicker when you get a cold because your lungs are damaged? We don't know. We're going to find out because you've all donated your bodies to science while you're alive. You are all volunteering as lab rats when you use these substances for which we don't know what the effect is going to be. And in the meantime, the cigarette companies, most of whom back these products, are laughing all the way to the bank. Go ahead. So we know among the smoking products that e-cigarettes are far and away the most popular. But we also know that kids who vape are 4 times more likely to also use traditional cigarettes, because sometimes your battery's dead, sometimes you're out of juice, and you can almost always find cigarettes. So all that progress that we made of wiping out traditional cigarettes, we're losing ground. And if vapes smelled or tasted like regular cigarettes, would you go anywhere near them? No, you grow up knowing that was a disgusting thing, a disgusting behavior. Go ahead. So what was different about how they went to market? Well, they didn't bother with the magazine ads, as I said. They went to social media, where you are and we aren't necessarily, unless it's Pinterest or Facebook, right? And you've seen all these videos probably, whether it was cloud chasing, the contest of blowing it out and sucking it in, blowing it into a bottle, pouring it, it's like a circus act. You've probably seen hotboxing, where kids sit in a car and they fill it with as much vape as they can. And it's like watching a makeup video. Here's the device that I'm using, and here's the juice that I'm using. And then they share it, which is great during flu season. Oh, fabulous. Now, some people won't vape in their cars because it leaves a sticky residue on the dash or the inside of the windshield. Mind you, they're not thinking about the fact that it's leaving a sticky residue inside them, obviously. But the other place we find that sticky residue is on car seats, which means that the little occupants of the car seats are putting their hands all over those surfaces, and then, of course, they put their hands in their mouth, because that's what they do. It's not acute enough of an exposure, meaning it's not a concentrated enough exposure for them to get sick in that moment. But just like secondhand cigarette smoke, the repeated exposure in those smaller amounts can have long-term consequences. We don't know what those are yet, but we will eventually. Go ahead. And of course, there's a whole new group of celebrities to model this behavior, right? That's one of the ways that these companies went to market. They hired social influencers who were of legal age, but very popular with people younger, to model the behavior, to show how fun and safe and cool it was, and just to promote the product. Innocently enough, they were legal age. But social media has been a huge element of how they went to market. Go ahead. Go ahead. So, what do we know about them? Are they a good tool for quitting smoking? Well, they're not a medical device. Medical devices have to meet standards for how they're made. These don't have any standards, as we said, no safety standards. Are they successful? Evidence says that people who quit smoking and turn to vaping are still vaping a year later. So they've changed their tool of use, but they're still addicted to nicotine. Again, for adults who were smokers, yay them, because it is likely a less harmful way of getting their nicotine fix. But for 4 million teens who were not smokers, it's not safer than anything else they were doing. It's just an introduction to addiction, an addictive chemical. And it plays right into the manufacturer's hands because they know things about your brains that you may not be aware of. Go ahead. It's a fad. It's a fad like finger spinning, like TikTok, finger spinners, TikTok, bottle flipping, that thing that I have no idea. My daughter is trying to teach me TikTok videos. If you ever see one with the mother who falls on the floor, that will be mine. Ignore it, please. It's not the kind of viral I'm looking for. The thing with the, I can't, yeah, no. But the thing is, this fad, when it's over, when you're tired of this, I'm so done with getting in trouble, I'm tired of getting in trouble at school, I'm tired of lying to my parents, I'm tired of spending money on this, I am so done with this, the addiction remains. And it's hard to quit. Most people, most adults who take up smoking, it takes them 8 to 10 tries to quit smoking. 8 to 10 tries for them to go a year without smoking, which means that's with the help of medications, of patches, of gums, all the things that we can't necessarily use on you because they're meant for an adult metabolism. And pediatricians are going to be very hesitant to prescribe medications for teens that were meant for adults. Now, some of you have adult-sized bodies, that's great, and adult metabolisms, but you know those squirrely little 14-year-olds who haven't gone through puberty yet and still have the metabolism of a rabbit. We're not going to be able to use those meds on them. They're going to have to rely on traditional behavioral stuff, i.e. cold turkey, which is awful and is the least successful thing. And here's what the cigarette companies, they know about you. Your brains are still a work in progress till you're about 21 years old. I get a new cell phone, I need 2 videos, a manual, and my 16-year-old to explain how it works. She has mastered it in a matter of minutes because her brain, like yours, is still making connections and learning new things. My brain is pretty well set. The problem is if you introduce an addictive chemical, whether it's nicotine or opioids, fentanyl, heroin, anything like that, when you introduce an addictive chemical while it's still making those connections, it resets those default settings for impulse control permanently. And it puts you at greater risk for developing other addictive behaviors, whether that's addiction to substances or addiction to things like gaming or gambling or other behaviors for the rest of your life. So it permanently changes those default settings in your brain. I would love to tell you, please don't do stupid things till you're at least 21, because then your brain is done. But that's the way it is. And it's one of the reasons that the cigarette companies, whether they're selling vape or they're selling traditional cigarettes, have targeted teens. Because they know if they get you addicted to nicotine, they own you for life. And if you've ever known somebody who quit smoking, they'll tell you 20 years after their last cigarette, there are still situations when they would kill for a cigarette. Whether it's because it's a stressful situation where smoking used to help them deal with it, whether it's because they're nervous or they need some motivation or they need something to get them jump-started because nicotine is a stimulant, or whether it's a social occasion and they're hanging around people that smoke and they miss it. And you know, if you've tried to quit vaping, it's really easy to say, God, I'm so done with that. Oh, that smells so good. Let me have a hit off of yours. Because it's really easy to pick it up again. Go ahead. So we know it's a stimulant. We know that it reinforces behavior because it releases dopamine in your brain, the feel-good chemical, right? Dopamine's that chemical that you feel when you've had a good meal, you see a good movie, you get that special hug from someone you like, your dopamine in your brain goes, oh, that was nice. Except nicotine releases dopamine here. That was really nice. And over time, your brain says, we'd like some more of that, please. And this stuff doesn't even move the needle anymore. It says, no, I want the nicotine part. And it makes your body crave it. And you will develop the craving faster. It takes me about 3 weeks of exposure before I would develop the cravings. Your brain learns so much faster. About a week of regular use, you will start feeling the cravings that your brain wants for dopamine. And unfortunately, it means when you try to quit, these things that used to release dopamine, that used to feel good, barely move the needle, not compared to the feeling you get from nicotine. So again, you're setting yourselves up. Go ahead. And there's nicotine withdrawal. And some of you could probably tell me all about this. When you have to go without taking a hit, when you cannot use your vape, you're on vacation with your family, and the opportunity that you usually have to vape doesn't happen, and you start feeling things like anxiety, irritability, difficulty concentrating, impatience, hunger, insomnia, digestive disturbances, depression. This is my 16-year-old on a regular basis. I need nothing that's going to turn that up. This is something that you guys probably struggle with, many of these kinds of symptoms to begin with. And if you're already dealing with anxiety or depression, you don't need something that's going to compound that, that's going to mess up whatever medications you're taking and whatever other behavioral therapies you're dealing with to try to deal with those problems to start with. So instead, you've just added to the mix. Go ahead. So part of my job is very weird. I go into vape shops for field trips. It's a very strange job. I went into a vape shop and I saw this display. I said, wow, this is really kind of nice, where do you get your stuff from? And you can see here he's got the concentration. So if you wanted to wean yourself off of your smoking habit, you could start at a high concentration, like 24 milligrams, and you could slowly start cutting back until you work down to 0, so that you've weaned yourself off of your nicotine addiction. Now, his high is 24 milligrams. Do you remember what I said about Juul? That Juul's normal product is 50 milligrams per milliliter, and their low product is 30 milligrams per milliliter. His high is 24 milligrams per milliliter. So think of it, how many of you guys all know what Mio is, right? The stuff you squeeze into your water bottle to flavor it. Think of it as the difference between squirting Mio into your water bottle and squirting it directly into your mouth. That's what we're talking about in the difference in concentration, in potency. So I asked the guy, where do you get your stuff from? And he says, oh, well, you can buy it online, but I don't trust these people, so I make my own. This is my own line of juices. Really? I'm thinking, what is your background? Are you a pharmacist or a chemist? So I asked him, what's your background? Well, I used to run the copy center at Staples, and before that, I sold refrigerators at Best Buy, but now I have my own business, which is fabulous. He had a lot to be proud of. It was a great little shop, big sectional sofa, big screen TV, a full bar to try flavors. But I'm not letting this guy bake me a cake, let alone whip up something in his easy bake oven that I'm going to suck into my lungs. And there are no product standards. We said, not just for the devices, but there's no standards for any of these. Go ahead. So when you test, and this is what the vape shop looks like now, right? That was an old display. Remember what I said, 15,000 different flavors. And there's no standard that says bottle A, labeled the same as bottle B, has the same concentration or the same ingredients, etc., because there's no rules. We didn't make them have rules. So you have no idea what's in the bottle that you're sucking in. Okay? Go ahead. Next. Are we marketing to kids? Next. I don't know, you tell me. Next. Because I can see the Marlboro man climbing off his Harley at the end of a long day and saying, man, I could really go for a birthday cake vape right now, right? Of course we're marketing to kids by making it seem fun and safe and harmless. I mean, how bad could something that was, Cool Whip flavored or birthday cake flavored or unicorn tears or Smurf sauce flavored? I mean, clearly, this is not a dangerous product, right? Go ahead. So we do know that some of the ingredients can cause problems. There was a lot of talk about popcorn lung, an ingredient called diacetyl, which is a buttery flavoring, which when you heat it up and eat it, it's not a problem. But if you inhale it into your lungs, like the workers who were working in the popcorn factory did, then you develop this gunky lung disease called bronchiolitis obliterans. Just one of a zillion ingredients that go into these. And there really weren't that many cases of it. But now, what a surprise, we're seeing a whole new series of people getting ill who admit to vaping. Who'd have thought? Go ahead. We have all these ingredients that we have found in different vapes that include things like heavy metals like lead and nickel and other chemicals just like the ones that we found in regular cigarettes, right? Formaldehyde and acetaldehyde, all kinds of ingredients, cadmium, things that we found in traditional cigarettes. Who'd have thought? Go ahead. Now we have this thing called vaping-associated lung illness. Now, slide is from the beginning of January. There are now 2,700 cases identified in 50 states, 63 confirmed deaths. All the patients report vaping. Many, but not all, about 75% of them report vaping products that contain THC. That means the psychoactive component of marijuana. So they were vaping marijuana e-juices or dabs, but not all were using THC products. So there's still some 25% of patients that were just vaping regular old vape products and developed this lung illness. Go ahead. We would expect lung illness among older people because they've had a whole lifetime of exposure, right, to all kinds of stuff in the air. But what we're seeing, 70% male and 36% of the patients are 20 years old or younger. That's young, healthy lungs that are developing this unknown illness. And we haven't been able to tie it to a single device, a single juice, or a single ingredient. Now, there's evidence that some 50 cases showed evidence of vitamin E oil, which is commonly used in THC juices because it makes it a little denser, makes it a little more luscious. But that's only in 50 cases out of 2,700 cases. We know that there are traditional cough and cold symptoms. So yes, coughing, difficulty breathing, chest pain, shortness of breath. But they're also having digestive symptoms like nausea and vomiting and metabolic symptoms like fever. So it isn't just about respiratory illness. We've actually had one kid who had to have a lung transplant. A double lung transplant. And the surgeon that did the surgery said he'd never seen lung tissue like it. This is not a person who had a pre-existing condition. It's not like he had asthma to begin with, although that would compound the problem. He said his lung tissue looked like Swiss cheese. He'd never seen tissue that was so fragile and so brittle, which is not what lung tissue is supposed to be. Go ahead. So we know there's all kinds of devices, right? From the old school, the simple, the stuff that hangs next to the Slim Jims and the 5-hour energy drinks to the pipe for your man bun wearing hipsters. There aren't any man bun wearing hipsters in the room, are there? I forgot to look before I said that. No, we're good. No elbow patches. Okay. Go ahead. Basic technology hasn't changed, although the devices have, right? Mouthpiece, heating element, reservoir, battery. Go ahead. And we've got, again, the flavors, strawberry margarita and crazy apple, and whether it's the cartridge type devices. Go ahead. To, the faves, whether it's the drop or candy pens or mods or puff bars. Really very popular. And again, all completely unregulated. Go ahead. As I said, no safety requirements for these devices. And no one cares to put any in place because that would make it more expensive to manufacture them. But that's the cost of not giving, much concern about your patients. Go ahead. Your clients, your customers. So this was the game changer. Teachers would not recognize kids charging them on the back of their Chromebooks. Parents saying, oh, honey, here you dropped your flash drive. This was the sort of new kid on the block. This was much more subtle than those other things and much more potent. Go ahead. They didn't advertise, as I said, in traditional ways. That's the only billboard they did. That was in Times Square. Who do you think the target market is? They went to social media. They had a very high concentration. And they used nicotine salts, which hit the brain differently than traditional nicotine in leaf form, tobacco in leaf form. So it was more addictive, more potent. Go ahead. Here's what we know. When we heat the juices, they change, but we don't know what they change into because there's 15,000 different juices and there's hundreds of different devices, and we can't possibly test every juice against every device at every temperature to figure out how they change. But we know they change, and they change into chemicals that we're familiar with from cigarettes, like formaldehyde, like acrolein. We can't test on people, that's considered bad form, so we have to test on mice or in cells in a dish, which doesn't give us an accurate reading, an accurate feel. And we know that we have to wait for years to see what the effective exposure is. And so for us, there's an awful lot of unknowns. Go ahead. But the takeaway for you, unfortunately, it's a social activity with an addictive component. And that means after the fad fades, the addiction will remain. The addiction will have permanent consequences because of where you are in brain development. That's just the way it is. And while some ingredients are food safe, we don't know if they're long safe. We'll find out eventually, but we don't know. Go ahead. So there's some other places to get information, and I'll be providing information to Mr. Cody on stuff that they can put up on the website, other resources. Think about when you see messaging about vaping, where it's coming from. Is it coming from someone who's trying to sell you something? Is it coming from a peer-reviewed study? I don't expect you to go to the peer-reviewed study, but I do expect you to look and see where's the information coming from, because we talk all the time now about fake news, right? Fact-checking is important because they've been trying to sell you something. Go ahead. There are some things that can help you quit. There are strategies. We know a lot from cigarette smoking. We've learned a lot. And some pediatricians are willing to prescribe the meds that can help, or to help you with patches that release a little bit of nicotine into your bloodstream over a period of time so you don't have those strong cravings. It satisfies the craving while you're trying to give up the behavior, because we know it's as much a behavior as it is a physical need, right? Go ahead. But there's a new website, a new program that the state is promoting. It's called My Life, My Quit. It's an app specifically designed for teens who vape. It's not just a modified smoking program. It's specifically designed for teens who vape. Go ahead. It has a good website, but it also has a phone app. It has a lot of person-to-person kind of support. Go ahead. And I will provide some information on that. It's very simple, though. It's My Life, My Quit. It's free. Go ahead. There's also some other resources. So the government has some great resources. Smoke-Free Teen is one. Go ahead. There's a lot of apps. Some of them just seek to distract you when you feel the urge to take a hit. Some of them challenge you to go a little more time between usage each day. Some of them are just, they don't have any that are like electrical shock that zap you, but, they're out there. So there's a bunch of different apps that are available to kind of help you. And it's whatever works for you, right? Whatever helps you change your behavior. Go ahead. Vaping, Breathe New Hampshire has some new programs. Very similar, a lecture like this, but also some other tools that you can use. All of this will be provided as resources. Go ahead. And then the Poison Center has got some good stuff for teachers to use, a Jeopardy game. Stanford School of Medicine has a good curriculum that uses a Cahoots game and a Two Truths and a Lie kind of follow-up. So there's some good education material out there. Go ahead. There's our website. Yeah, you can chat with us. You can text us. We've leaped into the 20th century. And this is my contact information. So as you can see, 1-800-222-1222. There's a song, I'll Spare You, You'll Thank Me. Or you can text the word poison to 855-1.